Okay, so let's talk about horoscopes. But don't worry, I'm not gonna do any tarot card readings or try to tell you who your soulmate is. I am going to explain how our horoscopes might actually be scientifically significant. They may tell us more about ourselves and our place on this planet and in the universe than what scientists want to admit. Because to many scientists, our horoscopes, astrology in general, is just junk science, right? It's mysticism and voodoo and mythology that ancient, ignorant, foolish people who couldn't explain the world around them made up. Yeah. If you hadn't guessed by that hint of cynicism in my voice, I do not think our ancestors were ignorant. I do not think they were unaware of their place in the world or how things worked. In fact, I think they were better in tune with it and understood it better than we do today, because we can't see far enough past our own noses to see our own arrogance. Scientists and mathematicians and linear thinkers can only view things in a straight line, and they can't see the entire sphere. So they miss out on what's actually going on, why there are correlations, and they just can't put it into their neat little controlled box. So, to help them understand how horoscopes might be scientifically significant, I interpret it into scientific terms for them that they can understand. I'm just translating the greater picture, if you will, for them down to simpler terms that these scientists can understand, so that maybe they might actually give it some thought and look into the matter a bit more. Okay, so here we go. Why do I think there's science behind horoscopes? Well, because everything has an EM field. We have an EM field. Rocks have their own sort of EM fields. Biological entities particularly have all sorts of really cool forces going on within them and are exerting various forces on the world around them. So if you think of it in terms of, if you want to use physics to think of how these horoscopes might impact us and impact everything around us, think of it in terms of forces. Because, I mean, we give off EM fields, we give off radiation, we give off energy via heat, we give off biophotons. There's a lot going on here. So, our situation, you know, what time we were born, where we were, our placement on the planet could very well affect those forces, what forces we give off and how. And that is the science behind horoscopes, if you will. Because the planet has an EM field. Other planets have EM fields. There's all sorts of forces interacting with each other all throughout the cosmos. And as the planets move, you know, they interact with their environment, being the cosmos. These forces, I mean, it seems insignificant. That's the thing here. It seems insignificant to scientists because they don't really grasp the concepts. They seem to understand, you know, Einstein's theory of quantum entanglement. They seem to understand that it's possible for quantumly entangled, just small particles, small things. Trying to put this into the simplest terms, how do I define Einstein's quantum entanglement in the simplest of terms? Well, basically this molecule and this molecule, I think we all know what molecules are, right? Okay, you're with me? Can potentially, theoretically, perceive one another even across the vast expanse of space, right? That's okay. So small particles can be affected across great distances, unfathomable distances in the universe, potentially through quantum entanglement, through forces in the universe interacting with one another. Let's say there's like a trickle effect. I'm trying to use an analogy here. Let's say, you know, the universe is a great big pond, and over here in this small area of the pond, somebody maybe pours a little bit of water, just a little bit, or maybe some rain droplets drip off of a leaf overhanging the pond from a tree. And it hits the pond, and that water goes in, but it doesn't seem to affect anything on the other side of the pond way over here, right? I mean, it's one little drop of water. Maybe there's some movement, some kinetic energy. Maybe there's a ripple, not much. Doesn't seem to affect everything in the whole, though it did add at least a drop's worth of more volume of water. But overall, who would notice? Who would care? It's insignificant, right? Maybe. What if that's a saltwater lake and that's fresh water? Well, you've just changed that content as well. I mean, these are seemingly insignificant occurrences, but are they really? You did make a change. It does impact the environment. The molecules in that droplet of water, you know, they interact with the molecules in the lake. Things happen. Heat from the lake, if the lake was hot, heat from the lake would transfer to that water, or vice versa, even if you don't realize it. The energies flow, the energies transfer, and we cannot perceive them normally. However, based on where you are born, when you are born, where the planet is, so that's what your horoscope is really all about, right? It's about the time you were born and where everything in the universe is at that time, and how those cosmic forces affect you, your forces, the energies you give off. And theoretically, if you're born, say, when the planet is passing through a part of the universe that might have a greater influence over the planet's EM field, say it weakens it, or maybe it causes that EM field to have a stronger electromagnetic effect on the living organisms on the planet at that time. Different things can occur. And that might influence what type of EM field you give off. Now, why our EM fields matter could be because we have some kind of latent, something we don't quite pick up on, ability to sense one another's EM fields. If we are able to subconsciously feel the EM field of another person, if our EM fields are interacting with one another, maybe it influences, you know, how we perceive that person, what emotions we feel when we're near that person. Maybe our EM fields, our horoscopes even, influence our health and our especially our mental health and our well-being in general. We really don't know. I don't care what anybody says. We don't know. I'm taking a page out of Socrates' book here. I know that I don't know. We don't know how consciousness is formed, how it works, how our emotions work. You know, scientists try so hard to find some sort of tangible mechanism, tangible being. There's 5 senses. Tangible tends to only refer to the sense of touch, what we can touch. But yet we can perceive via other senses. We can see, we can smell, we can taste. You get what I'm saying here. So I don't put much stock into the definition of tangible either. However, I am willing to say that it's possible that the neural pathways of our brain, the physical formation of our brain, is responsible for how we perceive, how we use our senses and interpret. We know that sight, smell, all these things actually do happen in the brain. We think we know. So if perception happens in the brain, all perception, all senses, perhaps our energy, our EM field, our biophotons that we emit because we have consciousness are influenced by the other forces around us, which are influenced by planetary position and the planet's EM field, which is influenced by other factors in the cosmos, the position of another planet and its EM field, and so on, etc. It builds. Okay. I probably could have done a better job of explaining all of that, but obviously it gets complicated. And I'm trying to put it in simple terms, and I'm trying to do it quickly, because I'm trying to explain why our horoscopes might actually be worth knowing. So we have 2 horoscopes. We have our Eastern and our Western horoscopes, the Eastern being based more on the year we were born, and our Western being based more on the month. And I actually think there's significance to both of these things. I think part of the problem that we face with trying to understand horoscopes is that we are dealing with remnants of an ancient science. I think our ancestors understood a lot more about the placement of the planet and the stars and the planet's travels through the cosmos and how it affected all natural things on the planet. So us, other living species, our crops, everything. I think our ancestors understood growth on the planet as it relates to planetary position. I think they spent so much time observing the natural world around them and noticing the correlations that they were able to develop a study that was very much based in science. Because what is science? Science is applying the scientific method. Science is observing correlations between things and repeating the same observations and getting the same results and making a study of it. That's science right there. Science is experiment, repeat, experiment, repeat, make observations, note correlations, what changes, what doesn't. All of that is science. So our horoscopes are a science. Astrology is a science. I think it's like the sibling to astronomy. I think astrophysicists and astronomers, they would be benefited. They would see an enhancement to their understanding of their fields if they considered astrology as just additional information, another side to their science. I think that would be useful. I think where a person is born and when they are born does play a role in their physical formation, which likely plays a role in the energies they give off. And the energies we give off probably play a role in how we perceive and interact with one another. Therefore, you can say that my being an earth snake and a Pisces probably explains a lot about me. Might have something to do with how I perceive others and how others perceive me and the overall vibe that I give off. I know vibe isn't a scientific term either, but I do think it's worth exploring. I do think there's some significance to where the planet is in its cycle as it's traversing around our sun, and how that affects us when we're born. And I say this because I was born during a geomagnetic storm. There was a lot of I'm not going to go into my whole everything that went happen. It was crazy and chaotic. There were a lot of things going on when I was born, a lot of astronomical things that were noted and charted. And since then, and this is the only reason I gave any real consideration to horoscopes, because I used to be awful skeptical as well. But I'm open-minded and I'm willing to look into things with an open perspective, because I know that I don't know. And the more I looked into it, the more I thought, I can explain this with science. I see the correlations. But anyway, the reason I looked into it was because people around me who were into horoscopes, they noticed some things about me. Like I would get dizzy spells from time to time, just out of nowhere, seemingly out of nowhere. And one friend was paying attention to the times and dates of my dizzy spells and noticed that they correlated to changes in the Earth's magnetic field. Now, I don't know if my being born during a geomagnetic storm had anything to do with that, or if the reason I was born at that time, because I was not quite done yet, maybe the geomagnetic field had an effect on me already in the womb and caused my early birth. I don't know. But it's worth looking into. So this was just one of many things that got me looking more into horoscopes and the potential science behind them. Our ancient ancestors might have been onto something. Anyway, I wrote an entire detailed blog about it, probably explaining it much better in the blog than what I did in this video, because I am a writer and English isn't my first language and speaking is difficult, so there you have it. Please check out that blog. It's not a very long one, just like this video. It's called Forbidden Horoscopes, and yeah, give it a look, give it a like, give it a share.